What's up, everybody? I am the Architect 04,
And I'm Lum.
and you're riding shotgun with the Zooka Bros.
We're going to be talking about next gen, obviously,
Yep.
next gen consoles. So,
Yep. Xbox versus PlayStation versus... I think they're the big two right now. I don't think anybody else is coming out.
I don't know. Even Nintendo might come out with the console. So, we'll get to that a little later because I have got some questions I want to get your opinion on it because I feel like you have a very strong opinion towards a certain company.
Yeah.
So what do you expect from next gen consoles? What do you expect they're going to be bringing to the table that we don't already have? That's going to be that innovative.
So next gen, as far as expectations, I would imagine that they would start stepping more into the VR realm. I would expect that, being that the hardware is better, faster, stronger. It'll be able to handle it. I know PlayStation's dabbled in VR here and there with the PS4,
the Morpheus,
right? And then and Microsoft has kept themselves out of that market, and I think they've done so intentionally, to develop the technology, which I think it's still in development. And when they release it, it's going to be much more refined. It's going to be probably up there along with the heavy PC VR systems. Maybe not quite at that level, but close. I mean, as far as other expectations, that's what I would say would be more in the realm of what they haven't already brought to the table. That's going to be the big one. I think the little things are going to be more stuff, more refinement, loading speeds, and cloud-based gaming.
Yep.
Where you're, I mean, and we're already in an age right now with the current systems where you don't need disk anymore.
Very rarely, unless you're a novelty, you're a collector.
Right.
You
like the hard copy, right? You like the hard copy, and you have enough space in your 50,000 square foot mansion to hide them all. But yeah, I mean, let's be real. Us mere mortals, we don't have the bookshelf space to keep 70 or 80 games in cases.
Sure. And I mean, I feel like we're moving more toward the digital era where they're releasing specifically digital consoles at a lower price for people who don't care about buying a hard copy, which is me. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't care about hard copy. The only way I care about hard copy is if I get it through a gift, like it's gifted to me. Then it's like, okay, it's a little more sentimental.
But even then, so buying video game gifts, a lot of times it's the people that are buying them for you, unless they know you intimately enough and how you like to game, and in that case, they're just going to get you either a gift card to one of the major stores to buy whatever you want, or they're going to buy you a digital copy, because then they don't have to carry around the disc and wrap it and give it to you.
Well, I mean, I have gotten a Horizon Zero Dawn for my last birthday. A friend gave it to me. So I mean, I feel like there are, but that's that's rare. It's like one of those instances where you don't expect it. So
right,
and I like that. So. But yeah, I feel like you're hitting the mark with that one. As far as next gen consoles, I think that they're gonna be more focused on being more PC like you were saying, and it brings in that aspect for people who can't game with PC, because I believe with these new consoles you're allowed to plug in mouse and keyboard, so. At that point, it is a small PC.
And even so, if that's the case, and I would almost expect something like that come to where we're moving, because there are PC rigs and builds that you can get that are cheaper. These console killers that are out there, they can get just as power. They can actually put out more power than the current gen consoles for a fraction of the cost.
Well, I wouldn't say that. It just depends on how you get your PC. If you do it right and you buy used, new, or refurbished parts, then yes.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, obviously, you can build a rig.
Yes.
With, I mean, not brand new, not top of the line, but you can build a rig right now that will compete heavily, if not outperform the current gen consoles. I'm not talking about specifically next gen, what's coming out, because obviously those are going to be, I mean, there's a reason that they're priced at $500.
Exactly.
And I understand that. However, there's still going to be a point where you can build your own PC and game with PC, just as you can, because you can, I mean, now you can connect any of the controllers.
Full with peripherals as well, like mouse, keyboard, and 1 millisecond response time screen, because a lot of these PCs that you're building, you need to have the peripheral to support that, because if you just have a regular monitor, you're not getting the most out of your graphics card or any of the, even your CPU, some of the pieces in your computer. You're not even being able to utilize that stuff that you just paid all that money for, unless you have the.
What about consoles then? Because you're plugging the console into your normal TV, right? You're using the TV.
Exactly.
Your TV can't keep up, then what's the point?
Well, until this next gen, right? Because we're moving into next gen, so it will be able to support 122 FPS or 100. Yeah, I think it's like 120 FPS or something like that. Whereas all these 4th gen consoles can only support 60 frames, and that's most TVs and televisions in a home, anyways, supporting 60 frames per second. So I think. And that goes with the HDMI cord, because if you don't have an HDMI that's can process 4K and stuff like that, then again you're just not getting enough out of your.
But at the same, what I guess my point is at that point you're in the same boat, whether it's PC or console.
Exactly.
So that I think peripherals it matters. But I think that's small potatoes in the grand scheme of, we're talking about the console versus the tower. The console on its own, it comes with one controller.
Right.
It comes with, so yeah, you get one part of the peripheral, but you don't get it doesn't come with a TV. It doesn't come with those are all things that you either I mean, granted, everybody has a TV in their house, right? Or several TVs.
No, for sure.
But at the same time, I don't think everybody's going to have that TV on the wall that's going to perform, unless you're outspending $10,000. Which there are people out there, obviously. There's people out there that are going to get the full performance of these on day one. But the average consumer, the average person that's buying these consoles aren't going to get the full benefits. They don't have the TVs that can keep up.
Right.
It's just the same as a guy who's going to go out and build a $300 computer rig, PC rig for gaming, super budget build that's going to be a console killer, because he doesn't want to spend the money on them, and it can perform with him, but then he's going to have to figure out the peripherals.
Exactly.
And that's the same thing.
Well, that's why ultimately I do feel like buying a PC or going the PC route, you spend, even if it's just a little bit more money, you're spending a little more money to get, because I'm not buying, when I built my PC back in August, I'm not buying a monitor that's not going to support what I can do, because there's no point. So I did spend the extra $400 on just because, you know what I mean? I want that full. So I do feel like there are people out there that do that as well, and they want that full. So they'll save their money, whatever.
Right.
And it's a little more expensive in the long run. Whereas these new consoles, I do feel like they set a certain lane where people can not focus too heavily on, obviously their TVs or whatever that, and I'm sorry, but it's just that if you want 4K, then you have to have a 4K TV.
Of course.
So, but I mean, if you're not willing to, these consoles give you a way to compete with these PC players and PCs that are on the market that you can build for a little cheaper, but still very good pieces. I just feel like, that's where the consoles come in and really fill their roles. And the next gen, having VR compatibility right away. You don't have to go out and mix components and whatnot. So I do feel like these consoles, you know, they have a purpose. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think if you were to go and you know, search the deepest corners of the web, there's a lot of people out there that would say that consoles are dying.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously
PC Master Race. Every probably PC player that is diehard PC fans do probably think that. And let us know in the comments if you guys feel that way, because I mean, it's just good to know, you know.
Yeah.
It's good
for sure. To just get the feel for what everybody's feeling.
Yeah, because you know, I mean, with the world right now in the state that it is, and everyone's so divided, we all believe a certain way, we all have our opinions, and you know, blah blah blah. So
well, let's, you know what, that being said, if you were to crack open any of these consoles,
right,
and any of these PC towers, you open them up and you lay the parts out, essentially they're all built from the same silicon. They're all built from the same stuff.
Metal.
They're all the same on the inside, just like us.
Right.
There's the only difference is the restrictions that we put on them.
Oh yeah.
Not to get super philosophical, I just want to say, but being real, I mean, they're all the same.
Yeah, for
you know,
sure.
Xbox, Microsoft and Sony and Nintendo, but people build brands, right? People build brand loyalty because, you know, you can only get certain things for PC and one or the other, and these exclusives, and I think that's you know, maybe segueing into another point is you know, brand exclusive. Exclusive titles like you know, you've got Gears of War for Microsoft and God of War for Sony, which are two big titles.
Big titles.
Halo for Microsoft, man, it's one of the biggest titles that Microsoft has ever had.
And
probably ever will.
They're still selling copies.
So yeah, I mean, here let me ask you, what do you think the biggest exclusives of this next gen, or the console exclusives, I guess, the opening,
like these big next gen exclusives that are like, what do I think,
like drop titles essentially? What do you think are going to be the biggest exclusives of this?
So the biggest, I feel like really the biggest exclusives that are going to come from this are Spider-Man Miles Morales, that's coming out on PS5. That's a big reason why people are going and are going to want to buy PS5s, is because they want that Spider-Man exclusive. A lot of people absolutely loved that game when it came out on PlayStation 4, and literally 100%ed it like 4 times over. So having people like who are diehard fans like that, you get them when you create a sequel like that. Did I feel like they missed the mark a little bit by not giving Miles Morales his own game? Yes, but that's for another discussion. I also feel like the Harry Potter game, that's the new Harry Potter, I don't know if you watched that. It was in the PlayStation 5, but Harry Potter is huge with people. Everybody loves Harry Potter.
It's a big part of pop culture right now.
Right, exactly. Absolutely. So I think it's a big move for Sony to have tried to get that as an exclusive. And a lot of these games that are exclusive on these consoles are now coming to PC. So it again begs the question, PC or console? Because I can play these games on my PC now. Why, you know what I mean? Again...
Remember, we're talking about new next gen console. This is starting to become more of a PC console conversation. But which
it begs that question too.
I agree.
But yeah, I mean, getting back on topic, I do feel like Spider-Man, Harry Potter. I feel like
launch titles. That's what I was going for. Launch titles.
I feel like those Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It's about to come out on launch day.
Right, but that's a multi.
Xbox.
Is it Xbox exclusive? I think they only have it for like the first month or two.
It's not Xbox. It's not Xbox exclusive, so I don't think. Yeah, it doesn't fit in that category. But I do feel like that game is going to be widely played mostly on Xbox. But yeah, as far as launch titles go, I don't think Xbox has a lot up their sleeve, and that's okay because their console, I feel like, is going to really push the boundaries when it comes to power and performance, and that's the real thing that I believe Xbox is going for. That's the reason why I want an Xbox One. I know you are a heavy Xbox user, so you are probably going to go for Xbox Series X as well.
Not at the likely. Yeah, not at launch. I'm the kind of person that likes to sit on it for a couple years until I let them get all of their
the hiccups,
all their stuff out of the way. Yeah, because when you buy a console on launch, and a lot of people experience this with the Red Ring of Death, with the Xbox 360s and stuff, and there was a lot of issues there. And I waited to buy a 360 until they had already been out for a few years, 3 or 4 years, and then I finally got one.
Yeah,
and and I've done the same ever since. I waited some time. It was the same with the Xbox Ones. Had issues at launch, up to the first couple years, and then once they released the slim model, then they've got it all worked out. At that point, they can condense it and offer a smaller package that does everything that the first one did. I think the biggest difference was they released the Xbox One X, the One X, I think it was, which was the Pro or the Pro version. And that one had a little bit more to it than the base, Xbox did. And then they were able to offer a little bit more in between gen releases.
Let me ask you this: do you feel like that puts you behind gamers nowadays? Do you feel like because you wait so long, you kind of are trailing behind everybody in the latest game, the latest, catching up? Because I know there's a lot of games you still haven't played yet fully.
Yeah, there's I don't think that it's my waiting that's put me behind. It's more just the time that I have to dedicate to it. Okay. Obviously I don't. With life gets to a point where I don't have the time to play as much as I'd like to. So I end up having spurts. All my fingers in a bunch of different different games and all these different pies, and I'm trying to do them all as much as I can, but it's almost impossible. So there's still a lot of games, several of the Gears of War series that I started and what I wasn't able to finish. Which I'm still working on, No Man's Sky, but that's another that game is an ongoing, it's a never ending, but something you can sink some time into. I know there's a lot of different titles that you and I have played together. And still do. But
Red Dead, that's a big one. I would love you to play through that game because there's not, and not everybody agrees, but I believe that the game's full, just the mechanic style, the story, not so much online, but everything else is very good. The game is very well rounded. I feel like you should play that.
Sure.
As well as a bunch of other games, but moving on towards, I want to talk about PlayStation before we're up on our time. PlayStation has a new DualSense controller, right? So, I mean, with that being said, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like that's going to factor into a lot of people's decisions on why, and PlayStation is also offering other peripheral items with their console to try to get that top spot, which they're putting out the remotes with it. They're giving you the DualSense battery or the DualSense controller, which is more than what an Xbox Elite controller is, which is basically what the Xbox Series X controller is. Let's be honest. Do you feel like that DualSense brings more to the table for PlayStation?
I think my opinion on this is really going to be it's a novel pandering to Xbox loyalists, if you want my honest opinion, and only because the hardcore gamers, the guys that are doing this, for a living, or not even that do it for a living, some of your average guy that comes home and plays some, an hour of video games a week. Yeah. He's not looking for the extra fancy. I mean, I think it's something to just, for me, put a controller in my hand, as long as it does what it needs to do.
Right.
You know what I mean? Unless it's, something that's, there's a game that I want to play that specifically needs that particular functionality,
right?
Then absolutely, I'm all about it.
For sure.
But, or if every game that I play, or that I plan to play in the future is going to utilize the totality of that functionality 100%, then yes, I think it's good. But in all reality, I think it's a gimmick. I think it's a gimmick that PlayStation's putting out there to try and get more people on board. Like, hey, look at my shiny new flashy controller that does this extra little thing that you're gonna find that is practically useless in the long run, right? Because we've been playing video games for the last 20 plus 25 years with a hard plastic controller with a couple buttons and it's just up till recently. Like, honestly, I could do without all the haptic feedback and the vibrations and stuff like that. Granted, it adds into the immersion.
That's what I'm saying.
Of the game, it adds another aspect, which is fine. But I can play a video game and enjoy it without it.
Of course, I think that the DualSense controller comes in for those people who are looking for an upgrade in their gaming experience, because they want, yes, we've been doing this controllers for the last 20 years, last whatever. We've had the same style. I think there's a lot of people out there, there's a huge market that are looking for more in their gaming experience in general. They want that immersion when they get into a game. They want to put their headphones on, they want to feel like they're in the game. So,
but at that point, those people, what they're really looking for is Ready Player One stuff, a full haptic suit and VR immersion, right?
I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but I would say that people just want an upgrade in their experience, whether it's a little bit or a lot. I mean, we have VR and whatnot, and we have experience, so I do feel like there is a lane for that. But I feel like that's what Sony was trying to do with their controller, is be like, hey, we have this new controller, it does this new feedback, we've spent hundreds of hours developing this, you know what I mean? There's a lot of people that put hard work into this.
No, of course. And there's a lot of engineers that have done a lot of work to make it worth the money. And I get that. Make it do what it does and do it well. And I get that.
Personally, you don't see the value.
I don't know that it would make it doesn't push me over the edge to say, you know what, I'm going to go buy a PlayStation 5 and not the Xbox, because I mean, granted, I'm a Microsoft or Xbox loyalist. That's where I'm at. I've loved Xbox since I had a 360. Yeah. But and don't get me wrong. I mean, I played PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, of course. And I vowed when I was younger and had a PlayStation 2, I vowed that I would never change. PlayStation was where I was. That's where I was. Of course. And that's where I was going to stay. But then I put an Xbox controller in my hand, and I mean, again, like I said earlier, at the end of the day, these consoles are all the same. It just depends on what. It comes to personal preference, right? It comes to, but they vie for power constantly and back and forth on what first, but eventually they're both going to have the same technologies, the same peripherals. They're going to have the same things at some point. The only difference is some of them, they will continue to keep exclusives for one or the other. These titles that you can't buy for one that you can play on the other. Right. And, some guys will be okay with missing out on them, and some guys won't, and just buy both.
Yeah. That begs my next question is, do you think you'll ever play or buy a PlayStation 5 system. Like, you know what I mean? Do you think you would ever like touch a PlayStation 5?
Personally own one, probably not. And I only say that because my next gaming steps will probably be to PC. And I say that because one, you can play with PC. There's practically no exclusive titles. Yeah, because anything you can play on Microsoft, you can play on Windows PC.
Of course.
Anything any PC exclusive titles, you can play on PC. Obviously,
of course.
And with the Sony, I think the Sony ones, those are going to be the weird,
right?
Exclusion because they, Sony doesn't have, they're not in the PC realm nearly as much as Microsoft, right? So they don't have like Windows. Right. Microsoft, their operating system runs practically every PC.
Oh yeah,
with the exception of Mac, right? It's either Mac or PC, and then some weird people will run Linux and there's other on some other operating systems that you hardly ever hear of, but 9 times out of 10, you're going to have a PC gamer who's going to be running Windows, and they're going to have almost an automatic entry point to all of Microsoft and the Xbox games and those titles that are available, as well as all the PC games. Right.
I mean, I'll say it now. I do believe that PC gaming is the future. It always was in the past, even. But
that's where it all started.
Right. Of course.
I mean, aside from your Nintendo and Atari, right? So again, console, you're gonna have the console loyalists. You're gonna have those guys that say, consoles were the original gaming. Atari was the first, or I think there was one other console that was even out before Atari. That's lost to obscurity, but I mean, that's the one everybody knows, right? Atari and the NES, the Nintendo systems. And then that broke into the modern gaming as we know it, and that's where it all was built, right? Yep. And then the PCs, were the only people that had PCs were the one where you find a PC at school, right? That you,
of course,
the green screen Macs and Apples that were there, and you play. What was it? Oregon Trail and Pong and some of the little easy games on them, but. Other than that, there was, not many people could afford the PC in the home back then. What they could afford was a Nintendo, and that's what they played.
Right.
Or the Atari.
I do feel like, what your first point, which is PC is where it really all started as far as like gaming comes in, because I remember the first gaming tournament was for StarCraft, and that was on PC.
So esports, I would agree with you that PC was where esports as a genre and sport in
as
general,
far as
competition wise, started.
Yep.
Consoles were where is.
That's where a lot of people made their first memories.
Console gaming was where gaming in its essence, like playing video games, that's where it started, was consoles.
Right.
So console started gaming itself, but competition, as far as competitive gaming, was born from PC.
I believe that. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap this up. I just wanted to ask you, how do you feel about the 4K Nintendo coming out this year? Do you think there is going to be a new console coming December that they haven't announced? There's talks that they've already talked to multiple developers that make Nintendo games to port those games to 4K. Now, the only reason that they would do that, I believe, is if they had a console in the works that could support 4K, because right now, obviously, Switch can't.
Right.
Any others can't.
To answer, I think that Nintendo has to be very calculated in their moves right now, because while they have the title exclusive market cornered, because you can't play anything Nintendo owns on anything else,
not even PC, unless
you emulate it, right, or you own their system,
right.
So they've got that anything Mario, Pokemon,
lockdown, dude.
all of it.
Yep.
Lockdown 100%. You can't touch it
right.
unless you want to play. So you have to buy their console.
Right.
But the good side to that for them, in their case, is they don't have to follow the standard console schedules.
No.
They don't. I mean, granted, I mean, if they want to, they can to capitalize on the console craze.
Right.
As people are like getting excited for these new consoles and next gen, and then they start looking at Nintendo. Hey, what are you gonna do to keep up with them to take my money, right? But really, if they could release a new console, 3 years after these big two, Sony and Microsoft do, and they would still generate the hype and sell out just as fast as if it were Black Friday, and it would be full price, in the middle of March.
Oh yeah, I
know
agree.
what I mean, and still sell out, and people would buy it and line up for it because Nintendo. I think Nintendo they have cornered themselves. They have their market. They have there's a ton of people. I'm a fan. I own a Switch. Because it's their titles are it's very nostalgic, right? There's a lot of nostalgia in there. I owned Game Boys growing up when I was young.
Exactly.
The original Pokemon Red and Blue and Yellow.
Oh yeah.
Like those games, they're so nostalgic that it's how can I not?
Right.
The Legend of Zeldas and the Nintendo, the Mario, Super Mario, all the Marios.
Yep.
I mean, that's one of those things.
Smash Bros.
Even nowadays, the younger generations that are coming into gaming, they still enjoy the old Nintendo games. If you put, you can put my 10-year-old in front of a TV with a Nintendo game, and he'd sit there for hours and enjoy it, and go, and start asking all these questions about it because he wants to know. He's like, oh, this was fun. Obviously it's not a Fortnite, it's not Call of Duty, it's not these modern games, but then at the same time it's like it's something new. It's it's a trip at a time. But so back to the original question, I think I don't know that Nintendo is going to release this year. If I had to guess, I think they would wait until next fall.
Next fall. Okay.
Yeah. So this time next year, If I had to speculate, I would think that they would be, they'd be hard pressed to put something out now. They would really. I think they're gonna take their time. They're gonna wait till next year after all this craze with Xbox and they're funny enough. I think they usually lag a little behind everyone else by a year or so, if I'm not mistaken, because the Xbox One came out or the Switch came out. It was a year or two after the Xbox One did. So they're not. I don't think they're on the same schedule as them. Anyways. Sure. I want to say their next gen stuff is usually a year to a couple years behind. The other big consoles. And again, just to create their own hype. And they do it every time. So.
Yeah. No, they do. They do for sure. All right. Well, I think that's where we're gonna wrap it up.
Yeah, man.
All right.
Yeah, I think we covered a lot of good stuff.
Covered a lot of great stuff. Let us know down in the comments what you guys want to hear next. Honestly, this is our first podcast, and
number 1.
We're gonna do a ton more. So, I mean, just let us know what you guys want to hear, what you guys want to listen to us talk about. Anything.
Any topics that you can think of, that you want to hear us go through and bumble and fumble our way through, but we'll get through it.
Hey, that's what happens when you're starting out. You got to start somewhere. Right? We all start somewhere. But all right, guys, that's where we're gonna end it. I love you guys so much. We love you.
Of course.
We'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.
Later.